Welcome to the Unspoken Files, where every story is more chilling than the last. From true crime and unsolved mysteries to the paranormal and the unknown, we uncover the darkest stories that demand to be told. If you're fascinated by real-life crime cases, haunted history, and the mysteries that leave us searching for answers, then you've come to the right place. Subscribe now and never miss a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Detective Ryan Caldwell had seen it all: murders, disappearances, cult killings. He had walked through blood-stained crime scenes, faced down killers who smiled through their confessions, and unearthed bodies in places no human should ever be buried. But nothing prepared him for the case of Daniel Reeves. Reeves was a seasoned trucker, the kind of man who had spent decades on the road, never rattled by isolation or the eerie silence of midnight highways. That's why it made no sense when his lifeless body was discovered slumped in the driver's seat of his rig at a remote Texas rest stop. There were no signs of violence, no forced entry, no defensive wounds. Yet his face, it was twisted into a frozen mask of pure, unfiltered terror. Eyes wide open, mouth slightly parted, as if his final breath had been stolen mid-scream. His hands clutched at the steering wheel with such force that his knuckles had gone white, but his heart had simply stopped. Security footage from the rest stop only deepened the mystery. At exactly 2:47 a.m., Daniel had exited his truck. He stood outside, looking down at someone, just below the camera's frame. His lips moved as though speaking, but his posture was tense, unnerved. Then, suddenly, he shook his head. His breathing quickened. He staggered back, clutching his chest. A moment later, he collapsed. And then, the screen flickered. Two children appeared, standing deathly still beside his truck. Motionless, silent, pale skin, outdated, almost Victorian-style clothing. And their eyes, black, deep, endless voids that swallowed all light. They did not blink. They did not move. They simply stared, not at the truck, not at the body, but directly into the camera, as if they knew someone was watching. Caldwell drove to the Lone Pine truck stop, the site of Daniel's mysterious and terrifying death. The truck stop was a lonely place at night, an expanse of concrete and dim overhead lights flickering against the cold air. The scent of diesel and stale coffee lingered, mingling with the quiet hum of idling engines and the occasional distant laughter from the diner. But beneath the mundane atmosphere, there was something else, something unseen, lurking just beneath the surface. Travelers and truckers whispered about strange encounters, their voices hushed, their eyes darting to shadowed corners. They spoke of figures that appeared in the dead of night, of an unnatural presence that sent chills racing down their spines. Sarah Hendricks, a woman who had been parked nearby the night Daniel died, reluctantly recounted her experience to Caldwell. "I saw them that night. Two kids, just standing by the trucks, knocking on doors, asking to be let in." She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the coffee cup in her hands. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Something wasn't right about them. Their voices were too flat, too empty, like they were hollow. And their eyes. She swallowed hard, shaking her head. They had no whites, no color, just black, completely black. Sarah had watched them for only a moment before an overwhelming wave of dread washed over her. It wasn't just fear. It was something deeper, primal, as if every instinct in her body screamed at her to run. She left in a hurry, peeling out of the truck stop without looking back. Even now, recalling that night made her skin crawl. Another trucker, Luis Ramirez, shared his own chilling encounter. "I let one in once," he admitted, rubbing a hand over his face. "Thought it was just some lost kid, you know? Middle of nowhere, freezing night. What kind of man turns away a kid?" His voice trembled slightly as he continued. "But within minutes, I felt wrong, dizzy, weak, like something was draining me dry. The air in my truck got thick, pressing down on me like I was suffocating." He shuddered, his knuckles going white as he gripped the edge of the table. "I glanced at the kid, and he was just staring at me. No blinking, no breathing, just watching. Then he started whispering something, words I couldn't understand. The sound of it crawled under my skin, like nails scraping against my brain. Louise swallowed hard. I panicked, slammed the brakes, gasping for air, and when I looked again, his voice dropped, barely audible now. He was gone, just gone. Caldwell listened, his gut twisting. The accounts were too similar, too eerily precise to be mere coincidence. And Daniel? He had seen something too, something that stopped his heart cold in his chest. He glanced at the darkened lot outside, the night stretching on in eerie silence. Somewhere, just beyond the reach of the streetlights, the shadows seemed to shift, watching, waiting. Digging further, Caldwell found more unsettling accounts. A retired detective's journal from 1977 mentioned a couple who took in a lost child one rainy night. By morning, both were found unconscious, their skin gray and ice cold. They survived, but neither spoke another word before vanishing from a care facility years later. Another case in 2002 detailed a gas station attendant who let a pair of children use the phone. Security footage captured them standing eerily still for over 10 minutes before disappearing off camera. The clerk was found slumped over the counter hours later, his eyes bloodshot, whispering, "They're in now." Caldwell shuddered, flipping to the next record. A missing persons report from 2015. A young man had sent a frantic text to his brother. "Two kids at the door. They won't leave." It was the last anyone heard from him. His apartment was found empty, his front door locked from the inside. The scratches on the woodwork, however, told a different story. "Let us in. Let us in. Let us in." Caldwell swallowed hard, his breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The air inside the truck was suffocating, thick with an unnatural weight. His instincts screamed at him to leave, but something held him there, some morbid curiosity, or perhaps a force he couldn't explain. Then a sound, a faint tapping against the passenger side window. Slow, rhythmic. His blood ran cold. The truck was parked in a secured impound lot. No one should be out there. Caldwell forced himself to turn his head, heart hammering against his ribs. Through the grime-covered glass, he could just make out a shape. Small, motionless, barely illuminated by the flickering overhead light. A child. The figure stood deathly still, its face obscured by darkness. But Caldwell didn't need to see its eyes. He knew. His fingers fumbled for the door handle, desperate to escape, but before he could move, thud, a heavy force rocked the truck. The temperature plummeted. The rotten smell intensified. And then, a whisper, low, hollow, right behind his ear. "Let us in." Caldwell bolted, tumbling out of the truck and hitting the pavement hard. He scrambled to his feet, gasping, spinning in every direction. The lot was empty, silent, but when he looked back at the truck, the passenger side window was fogged over, and in the condensation, scrawled by an unseen hand, were 3 words, "You saw us." Caldwell's pulse pounded in his ears. His breath came in short, ragged gasps as he staggered backward, putting as much distance as possible between himself and the truck. The oppressive weight that had filled the cab still clung to the air around him, like an unseen force pressing down on his chest. He turned in a slow circle, scanning the lot. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just rows of impounded vehicles bathed in the sickly glow of overhead floodlights. But he wasn't alone. He could feel them, watching, waiting. His gaze snapped back to the truck. The words on the fogged-up window, "You saw us," began to fade, the condensation slowly dissipating. A sharp crack echoed through the lot. Caldwell spun toward the sound, his hand instinctively reaching for the gun at his hip. One of the security cameras mounted on a nearby pole flickered, its red recording light blinking erratically before going dark. Then another crack, another camera. One by one, the lot's security system was failing, plunging the impound yard into deeper shadows. A deep, gnawing dread curled in Caldwell's stomach. He knew this wasn't a coincidence. He took a cautious step backward, fighting every nerve in his body that screamed at him to run. But then tap, tap, tap. The sound came from behind him. He turned, muscles tensed, eyes darting across the sea of abandoned vehicles. Nothing. Tap, tap, tap. This time, from the other side of the lot, a shape moved between the cars, a flicker of something too quick, too unnatural. Caldwell's breath hitched. His fingers clenched tighter around the grip of his gun. He knew better than to shoot at shadows, but the overwhelming sensation of wrongness made it impossible to think straight. Then, from the farthest corner of the lot, he saw them. 2 figures standing side by side, half shrouded in darkness. Small, motionless, children. Caldwell's body went rigid. He couldn't see their faces, but he didn't need to. His gut twisted violently as the temperature around him continued to plummet. One of the figures took a step forward, and another, and then The overhead floodlights cut out. Darkness swallowed the lot whole. The silence was deafening. The only thing Caldwell could hear was his own pulse hammering in his skull. Then, in the pitch-black void, a voice, whispering, inches from his ear. "Let us in." A cold hand brushed against his wrist. Caldwell ran. Caldwell tried to shake the fear, but deep down, he knew they weren't human. His research led him to one last terrifying discovery. People who engaged with the black-eyed children either fell sick or died mysteriously. Those who resisted were visited again, and those who let them in were never seen again. At that moment, his phone screen glitched. A new text message appeared. It had no sender, no number, just 2 words. "See you." Caldwell felt the blood drain from his face. He wasn't safe. Not anymore. Somewhere in the dark, they were waiting, and they were coming back. The case of Daniel Reeves was officially ruled as a heart attack, despite the strange details. No further investigation was pursued. Detective Ryan Caldwell resigned 2 weeks later. No one heard from him again. But sometimes, late at night, truckers still report strange knocks on their doors. Small voices whispering, "We're lost. Please let us in." And those who listen, they never come back. Did Caldwell really escape, or was his fate already sealed the moment he saw them? Was Daniel Reeves just another victim in a long, unbroken chain of disappearances? And most importantly, if the black-eyed children are still out there, how many more have already let them in? What do you think really happened to Caldwell? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment what mystery you want me to decode next. Who knows? Your suggestion might be the next terrifying tale I uncover. Until next time, keep your doors locked, and whatever you do, don't let them in. You made it to the end, but are you sure you're alone? If you enjoy stories that keep you up at night, make sure to subscribe to the Unspoken Files, because the next story might just be about you. Subscribe to the Unspoken Files now, before it's too late.